Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! This is a podcast based on a blog of the same name because repetition helps one remember. I am the blogger in question and the moderator of this podcast. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out the blog at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For at Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. I'm very thrilled to announce that we are producing more podcast episodes beyond our initial pilot 3. Because the panelists and I have things like JOBs and other life-affirming events, the podcast may come at irregular intervals to start. So subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes to stay on top of brand new episodes. In any event, I can assure you that several episodes will be produced this summer, covering shows such as Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Game of Thrones, continuing the discussion of Once Upon a Time, and hopefully many, many more. If you don't hear your show in this podcast format, though, check out the blog. I am still occasionally writing reviews and always seeking new podcast panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello. We have a Facebook page, a Twitter, follow us at CPU Podcast, and an email address at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com. Of course, you can always subscribe to the blog and sign the guest book or comment on posts you see. We love feedback, though not from trolls, for the record. Today we're around the water cooler, or perhaps more appropriately around the tea table, and discussing Series 5 of Downton Abbey, the finale of which aired in the United States on PBS, or Public Broadcasting, on March 1st, 2015 with the Christmas special. If you're unfamiliar with Downton Abbey, this period drama follows a fictional family, the Crawleys, members of the traditional British aristocracy beginning near the dawn of the 20th century. The Earl of Grantham, Robert, played by Hugh Bonneville, must contend with the changing face of British government and society during tumultuous times fraught with world wars, movements for rights of women and the lower classes, and a revolving occupant on the British throne, while wrangling his gentle but headstrong wife Cora, played by Elizabeth McGovern, his 3 daughters of wide-ranging personalities, his staff who maintains his home, from which the series got its name, and his waspish mother, played by the inimitable Dame Maggie Smith. In 5 seasons, the Crawleys have undergone great personal loss and sacrifice, despite their once carefree lives seated comfortably in the English upper class. The youngest daughter, Sybil, and spoilers for those who have not caught up on the series, she died while in labor. Matthew Crawley, distant cousin and heir apparent to Downton, and eldest daughter Mary's husband, who's played by Michelle Dockery, and her greatest love, passed away in a car accident when his portrayer left the show to do film. In many ways, the 4th and even the 5th seasons have been centered on the family's efforts to rebuild their lives and their connections to each other in the face of these great losses while weathering the tides of larger societal change. Mary seeks her next suitor in secretly scandalous ways. Second daughter Edith, played by Laura Carmichael, scandalously hides the presence of an illegitimate daughter she bore with missing suitor Michael Gregson. Cousin Isabel, played by Penelope Wilton, Matthew's mother, considers a proposal of marriage while her reluctant friend, the Dowager Countess Violet, Maggie Smith, looks on. Cousin Rose, played by Lily James, scandalously considers marrying a Jewish suitor, and Mr. Bates, played by Brendan Coyle, is scandalously under suspicion of murder of the valet of one of Mary's suitors, who raped Mrs. Bates, played by Joanna Froggatt, in Season 4. As you can see, life at Downton is quite exciting, even as it remains deliciously repressed as good English tradition would dictate, rendering the show one of the most watched dramas worldwide. After the 5th series finished, it was officially announced that the 6th series of Downton Abbey would be its last. So today, our fine panel of Downton aficionados will be discussing the finer points, including the scandalous and not so scandalous goings-on of our beloved characters during the 5th series. They will be reflecting on seasons past and considering the fates of our beloved characters as we march toward the future, including what the panelists would like to see in the show's final season. It should be noted that all of the panelists have viewed the entire 5th season and the entire series to date and may discuss sensitive plot points. So, for those who haven't watched Series 5, or really any of Downton Abbey, listen at your own risk as there may be major spoilers. At this time, I'd like to have our panelists introduce themselves. So, what I would like you to do is identify who you are by first name, tell us how you came to watch Downton Abbey, what made you start watching, how did you find out about it, what kept you watching, and while doing that, I'd like you to rate your interest in the show. This is a Couch Potatoes Unite standard question. How would you rate your interest? Do you care for each of the characters as you would your own children, like Cora, the Countess of Grantham? Do you dutifully watch it as any member of the aristocracy would be expected to do, like Robert, Earl of Grantham? Do you watch it with the aloofness of an intelligent lady, appreciating its finer points, yet silently critical of its attack on the aristocracy, like Mary? Do you watch it with misguided passion, yearning to fit in its world like Edith? Do you watch it with stalwart passion and principles, unafraid of the reputation it might bring you, like Cousin Isabel Crawley? Or are you afraid of that reputation, like Tom Branson? Do you watch it because that's what the lord or the lady of the house expects, and it brings you some happiness, like Carson, or Mrs. Hughes, or Mr. and Mrs. Bates? Do you watch it because you have no other choice or station in life, but you don't mind, like Mrs. Patmore, Molesley, or Baxter? Do you watch it because you have no other choice or station in life, and you're looking for ways to cure your position and your boredom for better, like Daisy, or worse, like Barrow? Do you watch it with youthful exuberance for the loveliness of the dresses and landscapes, but nothing much deeper, like Lady Rose? Or do you watch it, but you don't like it much, and you want to share your feelings with unparalleled one-line zingers, like the Dowager Countess Violet?
I am Stacey. I came to watch Downton Abbey after a flurry of excitement on Facebook from all of my friends, and I actually didn't catch it until the summer after it had aired, because at first I didn't really know anything about it, and there was this buzz, and so during the summer I thought, you know what, I'm going to catch up. And in all honesty, the first DVD of what I watched, I went, huh? I didn't get it. I didn't get it at first. And I thought, okay, I'm going to plow through to the second one. And so then the second episode is what caught me and just kept me going. That I love the costumes. I love the properness. I love the whole feel of that whole traditional English at that time in the century piece. And I think that's just what's kept me going, as I love each season to see what's new and exciting. And I would have to say I'm an Isabel. Okay. I'm an Isabel Crawley. Watch it with passion and principles to see what it is that they're going to do.
I'm Krista, and I started watching it actually only last fall. I was told that I absolutely had to watch it, and that I was being silly for not watching it, and that I needed to get on that.
All true.
So I did, and I kind of watched all of it really quickly. I binge watched all the way through season 3, and then the end of season 3 was when Matthew died, correct?
Correct.
And that I hit a bump then. It kind of lost some of my interest, especially because coming back with season 4 was a little bit of a downer. But I rallied and I followed through. I think I'm going to say I'm kind of like the Earl of Grantham. I dutifully watch. Sometimes I'm not always sure if I want to, but I'm curious to see how it ends.
I'm Kristen, not to be confused with Krista. I started watching Downton Abbey probably around the end of the third season when it originally aired. Again, a lot like Stacey, there was a lot of buzz, and a lot of my friends were watching it, a lot of my coworkers were watching it, and so as season 3 was ending is when I started, and I binge watched it completely in time to start season 4 when PBS started airing it, and I've been a loyal watcher ever since. I would say that my interest in the show, I'm kind of a combo of Mary, Edith, and Rose.
Oh, wow.
I know I'm quite the complicated one. I appreciate its finer points like Mary. I wish I lived in that time period like Edith, and I love the beauty of the costumes and the sets and the story in general like Rose. I'm a big fan of the writing. The storylines are what keep me going. The acting is what keeps me interested. This is one of my favorite shows just for the acting element, since that's what I appreciate the most.
All right. Well, as everyone on the podcast knows, my name is Kylie, and I also, apparently the trend of the panel as we came to it late, I did not watch the first season live. I had friends that watched the British in time with when it was being aired on the British channels, which, if you don't know, in the United Kingdom, Downton Abbey airs first during the fall, it ends on Christmas, and then we of the Americans get it in January, which airs through March. So somehow they had watched the British schedule, we shall say not how, and they basically told me, hey, we think you'd like this. Because A, I'm kind of an Anglophile, as you might know from the Doctor Who podcast, and B, because it's so steeped in history, and also Maggie Smith is a huge delight in just about anything she does, but I think Downton Abbey wouldn't nearly be as watchable as it is without Maggie Smith. So I kept going. I watched the first season on Netflix, and then started with season 2 on PBS. And I think for me, I would probably be something of Cora. I care about each of the characters, although I care about some characters more than others, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I also would say I'm a Lady Rose. It's all about the costumes and the house decorations, and the cinematography is very lush, and it's just very beautiful and very romantic where England is concerned. And being an Anglophile, well, that just appeals to my very core. So I'm very happy to watch Downton Abbey. So let us talk about season 5. What do you think of season 5 overall? Compared to season 4, compared to the other seasons, what did you like? What didn't you like? This is the have at it question.
For me, I thought season 5 was kind of the touchy-feely season. It was not steeped in a lot of edginess, though there were some very interesting storylines that I thought every once in a while caught my breath on here and there, but especially the ending. The ending I thought was so much more touchy-feely than they've had in all the others. Most of the others it's been a ending moment, and this one had that, but I think in a happier way than in a, oh my gosh, almost like when Matthew died.
Right.
That was such a shocker, and it was so different. And when Sybil, it didn't have quite as many, I think, of those pieces, which actually for me was nice, because it kind of felt like it was a season of, well, this is some interesting storylines and the pieces that'll go, but it was not wrought with as much emotion. The emotions were a little nicer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that. I mean, a lot less tragedy, for sure, this season. There's just been so much tragedy.
I thought it was, at least I hope, it was potentially good plotting for the ending. Because there's not a ton, ultimately, that happened or was resolved. Everything is kind of being set up for something else to occur.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, because I didn't love the 5th season, just because I kind of thought it was slow and, kind of, alright, let's get on with it already, kind of an attitude with some of the plot points that kind of dragged on for episode after episode after episode, when I felt like in previous seasons they would have been resolved in, half an episode.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Krista. I felt like season 4, it was much more of a rebuilding season because they lost 2 big characters in season 3 with Sybil and Matthew. And the introduction of Lady Rose in season 4, I felt was to kind of fill the void that Sybil left of having, the rambunctious, the experimenter. I want to go try, wearing pants to dinner instead of a dress. So I think Rose's evolution from 4 to 5 was nice to see because she definitely became more touchy-feely. She became more mature. But I also agree with Krista, too, where I felt like season 5, was setting up the dominoes, so they are now going to fall down in season 6 to wrap everything up in a nice little package with a bow.
Did you like season 5 better than season 4? Because I thought season 4 was just maudlin. It was so realizing that we're coming off of the 2 deaths, and it was a rebuilding season. But I also thought that season was particularly slow and slower than this one. At least I felt, not in all the storylines, but in some of the storylines, like Edith, for example. Edith was having her romance last season. This season, she was still looking for Michael Gregson, who is lost in Germany, and we now know by the end of the season has died somehow. But she's got this... I felt her storyline with Marigold, her illegitimate daughter, was very compelling because there was a lot of forward motion for her character. Although I would say that the Bates are kind of stuck in this never-ending cycle of
jail, no jail.
Jail, no jail. Tragedy, no tragedy. One of them's being accused of something or the other. So it's kind of... I would think that the 5th season's more uneven, definitely, but I don't know that I liked it less than the 4th season. I felt like the 4th season was, oh my gosh, we just lost Dan Stevens, and then we killed off Sybil. What do we do? You know what I mean? So...
Yeah, I have to wonder if they knew that Dan Stevens was leaving when they killed off Sybil, or at least both.
Well, both actors wanted to leave the show, and so that's why they killed off both of their characters. It's done very differently on the other side of the pond than it is here. The actors have a greater say in how long they stay on the show and how their contracts go.
Okay.
So, out of respect for them, they said, all right, well, okay, so Sybil wants to leave. Okay, well, here's how we'll end her storyline in a good way. Okay, and now Dan Stevens wants to leave, and here's how we'll end his storyline to help keep the rest of the story moving forward in a logical way.
I think season 5 was definitely, I don't know if I would say better than season 4, but I was...
Maybe it got back on track.
It was getting back on track.
Okay.
I love Lady Rose. I love her whole story. She is a kind of a breath of fresh air, if you will, in the just dark and sometimes depressing life at Downton. Not everyone has a great time all the time, unfortunately.
Which is really interesting you should say that, Krista, because I did not like Lady Rose at all when they first introduced her.
No,
but
either.
by the end of the 5th season, how they handled that storyline with her at the end came to appreciate her.
Yeah.
Because at first she was just so immature and frivolous, and it was like, no, I don't want this. I don't want this. But how she handled the situation with her new father-in-law. Fabulous. I absolutely loved that story piece. Just, yes, loved the way that it was handled and showed that, hoping that maybe they do a touch with that in the last season because, no offense, but I would love for her father-in-law to be found out. Because he made me so mad that I would love for him to be found out and see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if she comes back for the 6th season. Because I know at the end of the 5th, spoilers, there was talk of her and her new husband moving to America along with, Tom and Sibby as well.
Oh, okay.
And so both of those, as far as I know, they're still kind of up in the air how they're going to address them in season 6. Maybe that's been resolved now that they are in the process of filming. But yeah, I would like to see their storylines resolved for sure too, and get a little update.
Maybe we'll see America.
True.
I mean, just because maybe they're not all leaving, maybe they're just going to be elsewhere.
Here's my concern with season 6 too, because I think last we left, we were in 1924.
Christmas
I believe,
1924.
Yeah, post World War I.
Right. I guess I really was hoping that we would get to the crash of the stock market in the United States to be able to draw Shirley MacLaine and Paul Giamatti's character
I loved that.
back into
Play Cora's mother and brother.
Yes, because Cora's inheritance or her fortune is so tied to Downton that would she have lost that in the crash of 1929? Would her mother and brother now be dependent? Would they have to move to Downton permanently at that point in time? And so
Interesting.
I would love if they could touch on that at all, but I'm thinking that 5 years might be too much for the one season.
But you
I'm
never know.
not sure.
They've done some big year jumps,
They
episode
really
to
have.
episode, so I wouldn't rule anything out.
Yeah, none of the time jumps have been consistent. They've been either tiny, like back-to-back timeline-wise, or it's just been... I can't remember which one. It might have been 2 to 3 took this big leap, like a decade.
Like 1914 to 1919 we went, or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, like some episodes are
All
only...
of a sudden,
yeah.
whoa, it's World War One.
Right. And sometimes there's even a significant time jump between
Episodes.
episodes.
Like sometimes they're a few hours, sometimes they're 3 weeks or 4 months or years.
Or especially between the end of the series proper and the Christmas special. There always seems to be a lapse there that they never fully explain or
Yeah,
detail
I'm not going to
out.
lie. I've had to go on Wikipedia a couple times
yeah, we just go and
to
look
see,
and see
like,
the
okay,
dates.
where are we now? Because I missed it, you know, how they used to say in the beginning of the episode, July 1918. You know, I really missed that. So it's like I have to keep going back and catching up and get
And
the
like
timeline
this
straight.
Christmas episode that's switched in the middle.
That's true.
That's true.
It skipped. We went 6 months in like the middle, and they didn't tell anyone. All of a sudden, they were wrapping Christmas presents.
Yeah.
That's it's true.
Yeah.
It's like soap operas when the children in one episode are 10 years old and you come back next summer and they're now 18. It is just one of those syndromes of I'm suddenly gone. But
And that's interesting that you mentioned Shirley MacLaine, because I despised her character, and I hope they don't come back, but I doubt that will occur.
I love Shirley MacLaine as an actress. I was so excited when it was announced that both her and Paul Giamatti were playing Cora's family. I about hit the roof. I was just brilliant idea. Brilliant
I love
idea.
Shirley MacLaine. I just don't like what they do with that role.
Oh, see, I loved Shirley
it.
MacLaine and Maggie Smith.
Oh, that was
okay,
the
that's
point.
great.
That was
That
the
was
point. Because they needed to have a sparring partner for Violet, and who better to do it than Shirley MacLaine against Maggie Smith?
Truth. Okay.
Exactly. In sort of an American brash way versus Isabel's
Restrained
more
British.
exactly.
Yeah.
A more restrained way.
and I love those pieces because I sometimes want Cora to show her American side every once in a while because she's assimilated pretty much. And one of my favorite times was when Robert once said to her, "Well, stop being so American." I thought, I like you being American.
Yeah, right? I know, it is kind of hard to remember sometimes that she is supposed to be American. Like even her accent, while not pronounced, not specifically English, has taken on a tinge, I think.
She's very soft. Her accent's very soft.
Yes.
It fits in quite well.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about each of the characters this season. That's kind of how I've broken it down when reviewing it on the blog before. And there are so many characters, and so many characters we come to care about. It's kind of interesting to consider their journeys this season. First, let's talk about Mary.
Let's talk about Mary.
First, do we like Mary? Are we fans of Mary in this room? 'Cause
Yes.
She's very divisive.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 out of 3. 2 out of 4.
Stacy's cringing.
I like their use of Mary as a businesswoman and coming to her own as taking Matthew's role in Downton. I like that piece. All of her indecisiveness and everyone fawning over her and wanting to be in love with her drives me absolutely crazy, and I'm done with her and all of her lovers and people here and there, and I can't keep track of all the ones this past year because they all looked alike
Oh.
for the most part. So
Yeah.
Wasn't there only the 2, though? There was Tony.
there was 3 at one point in time.
What was the third one? It was Tony. It was the man that was coming in to appraise Downton, whose name I can't remember right now.
And the gentleman who brought him.
Oh.
All three of them were all
wow.
interested at the same time.
Did it seem like she was having a little flirtation with Branson at the end of the season? To you? It kind of felt like it to me.
I understand where that's coming from, because I heard, some of my other friends and colleagues were also kind of, ooh, maybe they'll get together. I'm like, that's gross. They're brother and sister at this point. They have a very strong familiar relationship with each other. They're co-executors of the estate. They need to keep them as brother and sister-in-law related. I think moving them in a relationship point would be weird.
Oh, Tom would never go for her.
No.
She's too stiff.
Yeah.
Sybil was much more freer and took risks in that, and no, Mary would bore him to death.
Yeah.
The only part
That's funny. Mary would bore him. Mary always talks about how everyone bores her.
Yeah. she's not adventurous enough for Tom.
Mary that makes me angry, though, is when Michael died, and Mary was just like,
she was
get over it.
Yeah, she was so cold and callous towards her sister.
Really
She's always cold and callous towards Edith. Like,
always.
I'm not sure, and maybe you all can tell me, just when I was thinking about this season, kind of reflecting on what we were going to talk about today, I was thinking back through the past seasons. Did they ever explain, other than the fact that they happen to be the two closest in birth order, why Mary has such an enmity towards Edith? I mean, Edith is kind of a sympathetic character. Some people like her, some people don't. But Mary's just, she's terrible to her. And at the end of the season, when Robert figured out that Marigold was Edith's daughter, they were very specific about saying, well, we're not going to tell Mary. So why, did they ever explain that? Why do you think that is?
I do think that to some extent Edith brings all this on herself.
That's true.
And she's very emotional and quick to take offense and all of that. And I don't know, maybe Mary just sees that as a weakness.
I think that's a good point, because to be honest with you, Mary's very haughty. She is the firstborn, which I am as well. So sometimes there's this piece of, okay, this is the way it needs to be, and you need to toughen up and maybe speak up for yourself. And so I think exactly what you said, Krista. I think there is some weakness she sees, and she exploits it because she just can. And maybe Sybil was the one who kind of kept it good.
She did,
for sure.
She did. Because there was that moment after Sybil passed, where the two of them seemed like they were going to finally get over their differences to honor their sister's memory, since she was the glue that kept the three together. But since the end of season 3, beginning of season 4, they've really drifted back apart, and it's still a war between those two a little bit. I think Edith is finally getting a backbone to stand up to Mary and know when to pick her battles and when not to. So it'll be interesting to see how their relationship continues in season 6, and if we ever do get a little bit of a, resolution as to why Mary officially doesn't like Edith. Besides just the speculation.
Just something to think about. Wasn't Edith in love with Mary's fiancé who died on the Titanic?
Yes.
Yes, she was.
So maybe there was some weird resentment there.
Could be.
I'm just pulling at straws here, like way back.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah, you might be right. I feel like they were already kind of this way anyway, but that was probably the nail in the coffin, at least for the time.
Because then Mary got to be in mourning and she didn't, or something, right? I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, Mary wasn't mourning, but Edith was.
Right. Okay.
Yes, I do remember Edith pouting for the first half of the first season, until she met that man from down the way at the other estate. The older guy. Yeah.
So it could just be sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
We all know families that they're family, but they just do not get along, and the older one will always pick on the younger man, no matter what. There's no specific reason. It's just pecking order.
Yeah.
I'm another firstborn in my family. I just have one younger sister, unlike Mary, who had 2. But I remember, from stories that my parents have lovingly told me, when my little sister came along, I was used to getting all the attention, and everybody doted on me when I was little, and oh, isn't she cute? My sister comes along, and all of that attention shifts to her. And so maybe Mary was kind of feeling the same way, where she was the one who was doted upon and loved, and everything was focused on her. And then when Edith came along, and Edith wasn't a boy, which left the heir of the estate still in jeopardy. Maybe Mary felt a little jealousy, like Stacey had said about, there's a new baby. And
well, I'm also the firstborn, and I get some of her instinct.
All of us are, actually.
Yeah, we all are. Whoa, how did that happen? But I find myself becoming much more impatient with Mary, I think, like Stacey does. And I just think it's because, maybe like all of us firstborns to some extent, she's a bit of a know-it-all to a fault. And she's so busy judging Edith on how she runs her life, and yet here we have Mary basically stringing along a bunch of men who are doting on her. She goes off and has this, I shall say again, scandalous weekender with Tony Gillingham, strings him along. Here he's thinking, oh man, we're getting busy. She's going to marry me. And then she turns around and says, it should be my right to I guess, field the suitors and try them out first. Which, that's a very modern attitude, but yet she would judge Edith for doing kind of the same thing. And that's the problem that I have with her. It's like, okay, you can make those choices and you can be the know-it-all if you want, but then don't look down on your younger, albeit, yes, she does bring it on herself so much. Edith is a whole separate topic. We'll get to her in a minute. I find their dynamic a little, I struggle with it. Because I do see the sibling rivalry for sure, and it is a drama, so I'm sure they ratchet it up, but sometimes it just feels so extraneous and so misplaced. But that's just me.
I just wanted to point out, Tony Gillingham completely, willingly stayed on. After she turned him down, he's like, nope, we're going to fix it, and then refused, even though this other lady was literally chasing him around the country.
That's
Absolutely.
true.
Yeah. And it was in part to Mary, and the second suitor, who none of us can remember his name, helped Tony and
the blonde guy.
A blonder guy.
Blonder guy, yeah.
Blonder.
But it was Mary and this other suitor option that helped Tony and his ex-fiancée get back together and get married, and they have their happy ending now.
Which is good.
Yeah. It's good that he woke up and realized that the person he should be with was always there.
Because isn't it Mabel Fox? Is that her name?
Mabel, yeah.
Mabel, yeah. So, but I definitely say out of the, I'm glad that the suitor number 2 is now off on a contract in Poland. And so he's kind of out of the picture. And so personally, I'm kind of excited that actor Matthew Goode is now kind of in line to be Mary's suitor for season 6. He's the guy with, he was driving the car at the end, and which I think brings a whole new level of Matthew died, Matthew Crawley died in a car accident, and now the character that the actor Matthew Goode is playing is a big car enthusiast. So how is that going to affect Mary's relationship?
Remember this. That was kind of teased in the Christmas special, wasn't it?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I'm a big Matthew Goode fan from his days of, in the movie Chasing Liberty with Mandy Moore. So, I'm rooting for him for that reason.
All right.
And see, I had the opposite reaction when she started getting when he left. I thought, oh, man, not again. Can she just have a season where no one is chasing her? And
but at the same time, if he's going to chase her, though.
Or she has some love interest or whatever.
Yeah.
And I understand during that time period, that's what women did.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I get that. But it's one of those things where it's just so exhausted from trying to keep track of all the suitors this year that it was like, oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Again?
But if you think about it, it was probably like a year and a half. We just saw it all very quickly.
Still, that's a lot of suitors in a year and a half.
Yeah.
I didn't have that many suitors in high school in a year and a half.
So I'm hearing sort of a consensus that we're at least glad Mary's suitor-happy lifestyle might have come to an end, to some degree.
I hope that Mary finds what she's looking for.
Yes.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah, because we know she's going to be taken care of because of their son. He's now the heir to the estate. So her life will be great. Yes, George, baby George. Her life will be great no matter what. I just hope that she finds someone to share it with like you do.
Well, only great if they're able to keep Downton going.
Yeah,
that's
which
true.
Is part of season 6.
Exactly.
That's a big question mark.
I mean, they've been struggling. I mean, Robert's almost lost Downton twice now.
Yeah.
I mean, Cora's money saved it the first time, and then...
And now Mary and Tom are working to save it.
Because,
we're working.
Well, and Matthew's money that he got from his fiance that he never married is what saved it, because Robert had lost the other money in the...
Yeah.
Didn't he lose it in the scandal with Cora's brother?
Yes, he did.
Yes. So, I mean, really,
So really,
Robert has never been able to maintain...
You think he'd trust all the other people more, since obviously he can't get it together.
Well, but, you know, it is the British way.
Yeah.
It was very patriarchal back then. The man takes care of things. Right.
as we're sitting in a room full of women.
Right. A room full of women in 2015 in the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a bias we're just going to have to overcome. So, let's talk about Edith. Let's transition to Edith. So, Edith, of course, first, at the end of the fourth season, her very understanding grandmother, surprisingly understanding Violet and Aunt Rosamond, helped her to sort of have this baby out of wedlock, which was a big no-no for the aristocracy back then.
For anyone.
For anyone, it's true, but even more so for somebody who's at a lord and lady level. And then helped to hide this baby, make sure she was cared for. And then Edith, sort of under their noses, stole Marigold back and brought her to the Downton estate, where she set Marigold up with two of the workers on the Downton estate, who then took care of her. And then Edith just couldn't keep away. She kept popping up.
Yeah, that was all very strange.
Yeah.
It was extremely strange. Apparently without appointment. That's just rude.
And I understand, you know, her desire to be close to her daughter. I mean, I don't have kids, so I'm just kind of going on what I think a mother's intuition is going to be at this point. I mean, I can definitely understand her wanting to be closer because it's the last part of Michael Gregson, and, you know, and she wants to have Marigold as her own, but she can't because of the aristocracy rules.
She just kept showing up even after that lady was
clearly saying
did not
no.
Please get out of my house. Please get out of my house. And then she would be like, oh, but I brought my Aunt Rosamond around just to see how things were going.
Mm-hmm. Yes, to show off the daughter that you thought you had hidden, Aunt Rosamond. So what do we think about all this? I mean, in the end, it was a somewhat happy ending. She was able to, well, Cora basically put two and two together, and then Robert put two and two together.
With a little assistance from Cora.
With a little always. That's always the case. And so now Marigold's at Downton, but as a ward of the estate. What do we think about this whole storyline?
I'm going to be curious to see what happens, because there's no way they can keep this a secret.
I know, right?
I almost wonder if...
And it's still secret from Mary.
Right. And I wonder if, to keep things on the up and up, if they're going to somehow have Edith legally adopt Marigold, even though there already is the legality there, just to make it so it's very appropriate for, you know, the aristocracy for the time period, so that way it doesn't look bad on the family.
I think during that period of time, and even later so in the United States, there are many, many children who were raised by their aunt that was actually their mother. So I believe that secret could be kept for a long period of time, especially if you keep it out of Mary, because Robert and Cora will never say a word, the Dowager will never say a word, and Rosamond will be able to. So I think you're right, Kristen, in that I think she will adopt the little girl. I mean, I was thrilled for Edith. Every time something horrible would happen to her, it would break my heart. And I kept thinking, you know, please just let Edith have some happiness.
Yeah, she
even
needs her
one
happy
episode. One episode, let her have.
I don't know. I just feel like she just kind of keeps getting, you know, knocked down again and again and again. She gets left at the altar. You know, she finds somebody that she loves who tries to go get a divorce, doing the right thing. He gets killed by Hitler and his bar raids, you know, and now she is the daughter out of wedlock, and she still can't have her with her. It's just, I'm tired of seeing Edith get knocked down. She's paid her dues. It's time for her to, you know, if she doesn't find a man to make her happy, at least have her have Marigold and have them have a good life together.
I was so proud of Cora when they met and had tea, and she was like, no, she is coming to Downton. She will be at Downton.
Yes.
Like, thank you, Cora. Yes.
Voice of reason.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she will make it work. And I really was thrilled at the end when Robert figured it out. And
And he was accepting.
He was. And I was very...
That's very progressive of him, and I like that it's taken him a while, but he's getting there, and I really have enjoyed that.
I think he has to. And he's starting to realize it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
The world he was raised in, Ronan, is crumbling. I think it's very true of the House of Windsor when Diana died. It was the same scenario, and that it can no longer be viewed in that way and keep that same viewpoint. I think that Charles did a nice job after she did, and then William and Kate have kept that up. So I think you can see the progression in the Grantham house as well.
Interesting parallels, actually.
It is,
Compare it to the current royal family. Yeah. But I think this season, and perhaps in spite or because of Marigold, she's matured somewhat.
Yes.
I mean, for one thing, she held her ground with this child, where in previous seasons, it was, if she held her ground, it was pure stubbornness. Yes. It wasn't for the good of somebody else. And secondly, she's done, whether rightly or wrongly, whether she's gone about it the right way or the wrong way, she's done very right by this child almost from the get-go. And it's somewhat selfish in the sense that she's her mom and she wants to be close to her daughter, but she's also doing it for her daughter. So that's kind of a change for Edith, which I think is good. I hope that she ends up with some happiness too.
Yeah.
By the end of the series.
I think she deserves it almost more than most.
Yes. So what makes you think that Edith brings it on herself?
Krista?
I think largely it's kind of the immaturity. I don't think she knows what she wants all the time, and she kind of just goes along with whatever kind of pops up. Kind of with that older gentleman whose name I can't remember. It just felt like convenient, and she felt like she needed to do something.
Because I think that's the tough part about one being a middle child, because Mary, they knew they needed to marry off. I mean, Mary's role was to find someone who could help keep Downton going.
Right.
So what was Edith's role? And when she would try and get involved or try and do something else, Mary would ridicule her.
Yes.
And everyone else would
sabotage her.
And basically, Cora and Robert would be like, oh, well, Edith, you don't need to take care of that. Your role is just to be a lady. I think she's just always been trying to find her purpose and kept getting beaten around by everyone else. So that's the only reason I guess I look at her and go, I'm not sure she brought it on herself. She reacted to what people did, but...
Her reactions aren't always constructive, though.
Yes.
I think that's
a
part
good
of
point.
it.
She's much more, ruled by her heart. She's much more emotional than a lot of the other people around her are. Which was
good, though, compared to Cold Mary.
Right,
yeah.
Right. But then that also goes back to what you were saying earlier, Stacey, about how Mary's the firstborn and maybe doesn't like Edith because it's like, let's just get her done, settle down, sister. But Edith doesn't settle very easily, so...
I'm sorry, Krista, I have a soft spot for Edith in my heart.
I do, too.
I'm willing to defend her all the time, because as I said, I just think that she's like that little runt of the litter.
Which is funny, because she's not the youngest.
No, but she was still overshadowed by her older and younger sisters.
Yes.
I found her storylines just kind of hard to watch. Maybe that's...
Overall the seasons?
Overall, it's just kind of, I don't care as much.
Okay.
Maybe that's why.
I found them hard to watch earlier on, but I found her story the most compelling, or one of the most compelling in season 5. Just because it really did see a shift in her character, and her character, that sense of purpose I think Stacey was talking about. I mean, her sense of purpose is Marigold now. So
when she first met Michael and started writing, I think
that was a great
personal
move for her.
Yes.
And I hope that they show that she kind of sticks with it. I think she's very good at it. It brings her joy. So hopefully she'll stick with the newspaper or the magazine. I forgot which one they produced.
Which she inherited from Michael.
Yes, and so I hope she sticks with it and keeps it running and just becomes this fantastic publisher.
That would be wonderful.
For sure.
So I did think it was kind of funny that that whole scene with Isis being sick and Mary's haircut.
Oh, yeah, Isis. Oh.
And then that was the moment she chose to be like, by the way, guys, I'm going to bring this kid into Downton. Does anybody care?
Well, I think it was a very strategic move.
It was just the staging of the whole thing. It was kind of a funny juxtaposition.
I agree. I think I agree with Kristen, though. I think
it was
strategic.
strategic.
That completely.
Yeah.
She knew Robert's guard would be way down.
Yeah, because he's so involved with his dog, and then when they have Mary with her new flapper haircut, it's like Edith just picked the right time to slide it in there and get exactly what she wanted.
And she did.
Yeah.
She did, yeah.
Can we all have a moment of silence for poor Isis? Oh, poor doggy. Okay, not really a moment.
Very quick moment.
Really? That's a concern with the storyline? I'm a huge dog lover, but it was like, it's a dog.
But at the same time, it's like, look how far the season has come and what's the average lifespan for a dog. It was necessary because of the time. She wasn't a young pup when it first started.
I thought it was handled very well.
It was. It was touching.
It was touching, and it was how a family would handle the loss of a pet.
And they didn't drag it on real long.
Right,
no, they didn't.
Good.
I thought it was pretty perfect.
Now, here's the question. Will we see him walking with Isis in the opening credits of season 6?
Good question.
They showed him walking with Isis after Isis died in season 5.
I would love it.
True.
I think it would be appropriate in the last season.
They've never changed the opening credits.
They haven't.
Except the names.
Yep.
Except where they appear. Yeah.
So I don't think that they'll change it.
Or maybe he'll just get a new dog to replace
I can
Isis.
see him getting a new dog, actually.
Because
Isis was a hunting animal, too.
Yeah.
As they said, this is the guy who always does our pets' tombstones. As in, this is
there have been more.
Because the first season was a different dog.
Was it?
Oh.
I read on the internet.
Okay.
I forgot the other dog's name, but season 1 was not Isis. It was a different dog. So season 2, so 1914, 15 was when they got Isis.
Okay.
So Isis would have been about 10 or 12.
Which is appropriate.
When Isis died.
Yeah.
So so season 1, that was a different dog.
Well, maybe the cover.
So clearly, they just get another one. They love their pets, but at the same time, this is a functional animal also with the hunting and everything.
Yeah.
You know how on the advertisement or whatever, you can see what people are still there and which people aren't before it goes out to see. We'll have to look and see whether or not there's a dog in there.
It's true.
This is true.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Dowager Countess. She had 2 pretty meaty storylines this year.
She's my favorite.
How can she not be anyone's favorite? She is amazing. Maggie Smith is amazing. That character is amazing. She has got the greatest one-liners. It's just so awesome. So her 2 storylines. The first is we've got Isabel being proposed to by, what was his name?
Lord Merton.
Lord Merton. And Violet sort of
rekindled romance?
Yes, her rekindled dalliance with the Prince of Russia, no less, who she met while she was married to the Count.
I think they were just engaged.
No, they were married.
They were married.
Robert was in existence at that time.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
so she almost ran away.
She almost ran away.
And child.
Yeah, because she truly loved the Prince of Russia, even though he was married at the time as well. They were there at his palace in Russia, and they just fell madly in love, and they were going to run away and leave everything behind and start a new life somewhere else. And
which sort of explains why she's so sympathetic with Edith in season 4. Because I always wondered, now how come she's resting her moors with this?
And this is why.
And this is why.
And it was thanks to the Princess of Russia. She's the one that caught them in the process of running away.
Right.
And pulled Violet out of the carriage and said, hell no, you're staying here. We both have things we need to do.
So what do we think of her this season?
Loved her.
I mean, aside from our normal love.
No, I thought the storylines were overdue. Okay. It was nice for her to get some, meatier stuff, rekindling her romance with, the exiled prince. And I thought it was very touching watching her be affected by Isabel's suitors,
it made her more real, I think. It made, other than this kind of stereotypical dowager of clearly she just had this very traditional life and this is everything, but there's more to her, and I kind of like that.
And I liked how she really expressed how deeply she feels for Isabel. They hated each other in the beginning because Isabel was everything Violet wasn't. Isabel was very progressive. She had a job. Violet was just the lady of the house. And it was nice to see their friendship progress, and it was even greater seeing Isabel confess, I will miss her. She's my companion. What will I do without her if she accepts this proposal? I need to keep her here. How can that happen?
I found the Russian prince thing boring. Did not find that very interesting with her at all. I mean, it was interesting that, she had that secret life. At first with the situation with Isabel and Lord Merton, that was annoying me, that she was trying to sabotage it.
She was
It really bothered me. And then when she confessed at the end, then it was like,
she was doing it for selfish reasons, but it was out of love for Isabel.
Exactly. I liked the way they tied that one up and stuff. I love her one-liners, and I love how she can go from being ultra, this is the way it needs to be, and other times be super compassionate on the other side. I enjoy those pieces. She's not my favorite, but I enjoy her and things. But the Prince storyline, I didn't find much. That didn't draw me at all for that one.
I just thought it was interesting, she's so prim and proper, and then to see her almost get a second chance at, a great love of her life, and instead she chose to go find the prince's wife in Hong Kong. I thought that was very selfless of her. I feel like it was just, again, presenting her with a side that we don't get to see, besides showing us her former life, but showing that she can be selfless and do the best thing for others, even if it's not the best thing for herself.
I think she owed it to the princess, and she knew it. She knew she owed the princess for what had happened, so she was never going to be with the prince. I think he wanted to, and she knew from the day he showed back up again
that she had to try to find her.
Absolutely.
And the princess didn't even seem very grateful that she was found. Almost like she was happier being away from her husband. I don't know. I just got the impression that she wasn't too excited.
Well, the prince was kind of saying that all along, that something was wrong, for lack of a better word, with the princess, and that he really didn't want her to be found. He really just wanted that to sort of end its natural course. Because I think the princess was the one who, well, they were all refugees out of Russia, but she kind of kept going. The princess did. So I think that was always foreshadowed, but then the Dowager Countess, Violet, kind of brought her back. That's that sense of duty piece again that she seems to hold her whole life by. That's kind of how I saw it. It's like, okay, I did my thing. I went back. I listened to your daughter. I went back. I had my life. Now you got to do the same thing. You owe it to your wife, or whatever is the case. What about Robert and Cora? So Cora had a bit of a flirtation with this art dealer.
She did not. He flirted and she didn't.
That's true.
She did like the attention.
She did like the attention.
She liked the attention. And I feel like that was kind of part of her American side kind of coming out. Robert, being the traditional Englishman, he's a little more conserved and reserved with his emotions. And, she felt like she wasn't being heard and her opinion didn't matter as far as the future of the estate and the family. And here comes this gentleman who's, he's well educated, he has an appreciation of arts and culture, and he found her interesting.
And she did have a lot of knowledge about the art within the Abbey. I mean, I totally agree with you. Robert was just overreacting. It's just completely overreacting. But I just thought that was an interesting little wedge that they threw into the season. Like, oh, Cora's being flirted with, and Robert's going to be all huff, huff, huff about it.
I loved it. That was one of my favorite storylines because I wanted her to have this thing. And my other favorite part of that was when they were trying to work it out in the end and going back into the same bedroom. And she said to him, if you can say that you've never flirted with anyone, they come back in. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, You did, Robert.
Yeah.
Remember he did with the
maid.
one. Yes. And it was like, oh, you remember her name? I'm so impressed.
What was her name?
Jane, I think.
Jane. Oh, right.
Yes.
I remember Jane.
And I was like, oh, Robert, you double standard man.
They kissed. Robert and
You're
Jane
right.
did kiss. All Cora did was go out and look at art and have some dinners with this guy.
It's absolutely
when I forgot what this gentleman's name is, but when the art dealer, connoisseur, when he tried to make a move, Cora shut him down.
Absolutely.
She wasn't going to risk her honor and her reputation in her marriage, but I think she enjoyed the companionship for sure.
Because I don't think she would have had an affair with him at all, but I think you're right. I think she liked that he valued her, her opinion, all of those pieces, and that they could have been friends. If he had kept it a secret crush, they probably could have continued to have those pieces. But it annoyed me, too, when Robert was so mad at her because, well, I showed up in London and you weren't there. Like, well, buddy, you surprised her.
Yeah.
You didn't tell her you were coming.
Of course she would have other plans. She's not waiting around for the chance you're going to pop up.
Exactly.
Even though that's his expectation.
Right.
Exactly.
So
that was one of my favorite storylines.
Yeah.
And I'm glad she slapped him back in place.
Yeah.
Big Cora fan and Stacey.
I am. Well, I like her. You know where I struggle with Cora? Is her belief that everything Barrow does for them is for their own good. It's like,
can he just get his already?
Seriously. It's like, Cora, she thinks
She's
that
so
he's
blind to him.
Yes, thank you. That's
I did
exactly
find
it.
some sympathy for him this season.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
I'm cold-hearted towards Barrow. I do not like him. I can appreciate his cunningness and his few redeeming moments. I can appreciate, but I just want him to get his and get out of there.
Well, I mean, I agree with Krista. I think while I would never fully cross the line of sympathizing with him, actually, this is an interesting point for those of you nerds out there who like both Downton Abbey and Harry Potter. For a while on social media, it was circulating. They were asking the actors of Downton Abbey which house at Hogwarts they thought their character would sort into, because what could be more British than Downton Abbey and Harry Potter? And of course, and rightly so, the man who plays Barrow said, well, clearly he's a Slytherin, because he is. I mean, he's nothing but ambition.
He's cunning. He's very cunning and strategic.
Exactly. But this season, what we find out, first he starts the season trying to cure himself of his homosexuality, which I think was very interesting.
That is the only time I felt sympathetic for him.
Oh, well, that's a little bit different than what you were just saying.
I know, but I will say that is the only time I felt sympathetic.
Okay.
Because that's rough.
And then there was the drunken servant at the London house.
That man was horrible.
Yes.
I mean, don't be mean to Tom.
Yeah.
Tom Branson's the best.
Yeah. So he kind of swooped in and used his cunning for good in that scenario.
At the same time, if Lady Rose had not done what she'd done, Barrow would have created something really bad.
That's true.
Yeah.
By having had the mistress and the illegitimate child show up.
Well, he'll never
Rose
be
was on
pure
her
of
toes.
heart.
Yeah.
Right.
But I liked what he did at I think it was the London house too, with the young man.
Oh yeah, the servant that they had hired
that was
temporarily.
nice.
Yeah, that's what I was
Underground
referring to.
gambling.
Yeah. So I thought he did a nice job of taking him under without, it didn't feel like there was any agenda there other than just wanting to help him out.
Well, I feel like there was an attraction agenda going on, so I think it was trying to, get in the young, cute boy's favor, maybe. Like Jimmy.
Yeah.
I didn't sense that. Not from that one.
I sensed a little, but I think
it
he knew that it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a crush.
Maybe I'm reading into it, though, just because that's his usual pattern.
That is his usual pattern. Well, and that's why I'm suggesting, while he'll never be pure of heart, because I don't think he's totally capable of that, maybe he's progressed a little bit. I mean, without, what's her name? Not Baxter's predecessor.
She was season 1 and season 2, right?
And 3, I think. I mean, they were sort of feeding off each other for the longest time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Baxter came in, and Baxter's actually somebody who knew Barrow from a previous life. and has been nothing but kind to him and has been trying to say, I can help you, it doesn't have to be this way. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like I feel he's taking her a little bit at her word and accepting that help, and that's softening him a little bit in turn.
Didn't she have an opportunity to kind of, I don't really want to say destroy him, but kind of get back at him a little bit, and she chose not to take it? She took a bullet for him, essentially?
Yes, because Baxter, we know, is a kind person.
Yes.
And her situation was something very unfortunate that happened where she told a lie, but it was for selfless reasons.
Yes.
So...
Well, and then the one before her, between the two, was the one who tried to get pregnant with Tom's baby.
Right.
Yeah.
What's her name?
O'Brien.
O'Brien!
Yeah.
Why could none of us remember this? Sorry, actress who played her. Okay, yes. So they used to feed off each other.
I guess Tom's little dalliance
with the little blonde maid, housemaid,
Branson's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how she came back again, and yeah, that was unexpected to see her pop up a second time.
I did not like the school teacher thing.
Oh goodness!
I mean, for the first time in probably the history of the show, I was completely and totally on the side of the family, because even though she might have had good reasons, she was just flat out rude. She was
so rude.
Walking into their house, sitting at their dinner table, and clearly instigating arguments.
And she knew she was doing it.
And knew it.
Yeah,
yes.
Because she told Tom, I'll be nice if he will. Like,
yeah, you can't.
What?
Yeah.
You can't go to someone's home and
insult them
And the Earl was Robert was very polite to her. It was only when she just started basically clawing at the whole setup,
at their lifestyle and everything.
Which had not. I mean, they didn't create it.
Daisy's name and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
she took a stick and was poking the bear every time she walked into the den.
Exactly.
I mean, I like what she did for Daisy, and I think her main purpose was to help kind of reopen Tom's eyes to what he had lost in himself
for sure
by being so integrated with the family, but. Oh, I'm very glad she was a one-and-done season kind of girl.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I think the big piece, too, is it was just common courtesy. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even aristocratic versus working class. Yeah. We all sit here and go, it was rude.
Yeah.
It's just common behavior that you wouldn't do in somebody else's house.
Exactly.
Especially if you might have done it the first time, but if you got invited back, would you do it the second time?
Never.
I don't know. I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
Speaking of Daisy, I loved her whole thing.
Yes.
Her whole storyline.
It's nice that she wants to make her own way in the world and, move herself up.
And I like they keep connecting her with the farmer.
Yes.
Yeah. With her father-in-law.
I do. I like
so
that.
Sweet. And
it is.
I think it'd be really nice if she, took over the farm and, kept it running for him. I think that would be such a great ending for her.
I would love it, though, if she maybe went to school. Maybe went to London, like she thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Molesley's available to teach her right now.
That's true.
Right.
And has been doing it. Mm-hmm. So.
And, my heart goes to Molesley, too.
Oh, he's so sweet. I hope him and Baxter get together.
I would very much like
they're
that.
They're so cute in their little, timid flirtation. There's so much care and concern between those two.
There is. He bothered me when he kept, feeling bad for himself and thinking of that.
Total sorry sad sack.
Yes, that bothered me. But then I've liked where they've gone with him.
Yeah.
I like Molesley. But because how, it's like his person he was caring for just suddenly dies and, what happens. Yeah.
I want to make sure we can talk about Mrs. Hughes and Mr. Carson.
Oh, for sure. And we still haven't touched on the Bateses yet either.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Carson and Hughes and their
long time coming. Long time coming.
I mean, did we even see this from the beginning? I know we saw it progressively evolve.
I mean, from the very beginning, I didn't see it. It was when they were holding hands at the seaside that my heart skipped a beat and just. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah. They're precious together. They're very precious.
I had mentioned to Krista, I think earlier, that I was so glad I was alone in my house when I watched that, because I was screaming so loud as it's building up, because I knew where he was going. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my poor dogs kept looking at me going, what is going on?
I'm not going to lie, I think I cried a little bit.
I did too.
I
did too.
Tears of joy.
Yep.
And it was so beautifully done. It was beautifully written, beautifully acted.
Yep.
Yes.
You know.
And they're still so polite, like I was saying. They were still calling each other Mr. Carson and Mrs. Hughes throughout the whole proposal.
And they probably will always continue to do that even after they're married.
Right?
I know. Krista asked, do we
Mr.
even know their
Bates
first
do.
names? I don't know their first names.
Because the Bates still call themselves by Mr. Bates and
Mrs.
Bates.
They sure do.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's so sweet, though, that they do that. But I know we do know both of their first names.
John and Anna.
No, the
Carson and Hughes.
Yeah, I know we do know them because they've both received mail. They've had visitors who've called them by their first names, but it's very rarely mentioned.
Yeah,
Well,
I
'cause
couldn't remember them.
Didn't his entertainment partner,
Yes.
when he came back, his name was mentioned?
Is it Charlie? Charles Carson?
Charlie, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Charles
Yeah, because
Carson.
he kept calling him Charlie. So it's Charles Carson and...
Who knows Hughes?
Elsie.
Huh?
Elsie.
Elsie.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie and Elsie.
Because didn't she get a proposal
She
from
did.
someone on
She
the other
did.
seasons?
Yeah, one of her old friends.
That's
Yeah,
right.
he was widowed. Like, I think they were almost going to get married.
Yes,
and then
you're right.
She turned him down. They both married other people. They're both widowers. He came back, and
Yeah,
she couldn't leave the family.
right.
Right, because she was caring for her sister.
She's never been married.
Yeah,
Bates.
she's never been married because she had to. She took her job or kept her job at Downton because her
Right.
sister's got some sort of mental illness. I think.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had said, because he said, Mrs. And she's like, it's just the title.
Okay.
So
So that was lovely.
That
Yes.
was lovely. They're the bright spots in
Yes.
sometimes
Yes.
otherwise sad or tragic seasons. So speaking of sad and tragedy, let's talk about the never-ending cycle that is, I mean, they're a darling couple, Mr. and Mrs. Bates, but they seem to be on this hamster wheel of in and out of prison, in and out of crime. And at the end of the Christmas special, spoilers for those of you who are keeping tabs, Mr. Bates was, for all intents and purposes, acquitted, but then they came after Mrs. Bates, and Mrs. Bates went to jail, and then Mr. Bates said, no, I did it in fact, so then he went to jail, and then he came up...
He went on the lamb.
Oh, he went on the lamb.
Ireland. Yeah.
Right, but then he came
Ireland.
back and risked his whole well-being for Christmas.
Yeah.
Happy Christmas.
I think they had found that he didn't do it, so he was fine. But Mrs. Bates is still on bail.
Under suspicion, right?
Yeah. I'm very tired of this jail, no jail storyline. I feel they just keep rehashing the same things, and I'm so ready for it to be done. I hope they find the real person who murdered Mr. Green, supposedly, the
So do you think that but both parties are completely innocent in the murder of Mr. Green?
I don't think that Anna has it in her to shove Mr. Green into the street. I think maybe part of her would like to after what has happened to her.
Sure.
And I think, Bates, he did admit that he was there that day. And I could easily see him thinking about it, but I don't think he wants to risk his happy life with Anna by potentially going to jail again. I don't see it.
He would be killed.
Yeah.
If he went to jail again.
Executed?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see either of them being the culprit. I could see somebody else from the household doing it. Maybe Barrow did it. Maybe we're going to find out that Barrow did it.
That would be interesting.
That would be a twist.
If it was someone else found out.
Yeah.
Ooh! Maybe it's the new lady's maid. What's her name?
Baxter.
Well, how many of the servants at Downton, though, really know what happened
Mrs.
to...
Hughes?
Mrs. Hughes does. Does Carson
And that's
know?
who I think it could be.
Mrs. Hughes? She does have a bit of spitfire in her.
His words were, and they sent you, is what they're saying that was overheard, was that they sent you. And so it would not surprise me, because she's frustrated that...
She's the one who found her.
Yeah.
And that...
Well, because she was hiding in Mrs. Hughes's office, essentially.
Right.
In her sitting room.
So Carson and Hughes could be happy, and then...
Oh, no.
But the whole Bates couple, I'm so done with them. They
were very cute. I liked their romance. It felt a little weird at first just because of their age difference. Mm-hmm. But again, not uncommon for that time period. But I want to see this grain business resolved as quickly as possible, and I want to see them have babies and be happy together and stop the jail, no jail hamster wheel.
I agreed. Totally.
That's consensus. Mm-hmm. Stop. Give Bates a happy ending, or at least an ending that does not continue the storyline. So we've talked about. I think we've touched on all the characters. There are a couple little storylines we haven't really fleshed out too much. I mean, there was this business with Carson and Robert sharing the memorial duties, which was, to me, the most boring storyline.
Yeah.
And we still have to deal with whether or not Branson moves to America and takes young Sibby with him.
I think he's going.
You think he's going for sure?
They're going because he has a cousin who's in Boston who's going to set him up with a place to live. So I think they will go, but hopefully it won't be permanent.
So do you think they'll go at the beginning of season 6, or is this something that we're going to end with him kind of saying, goodbye, I'm immigrating to America?
Well, it was at the end of the Christmas episode where he said, we're going. Mm-hmm. And it sounded like they were going relatively quickly.
They were packed.
That they were ready to go. It was just after the holidays.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if they don't show up on season 6 at all.
Yeah, because that was a big fan comment question was, is Tom Branson signed up for season 6? Is the actor going to continue? And at the time when that premiered in America, everything was still up in the air. And with the character who plays Lady Rose as well, since she's also moving to America with her new husband.
Because I think they
and she was in Cinderella. She was the live-action Cinderella.
Well, and now she's also doing Romeo and Juliet with her Prince Charming. They're playing that in London as well.
Okay.
So she does have other
She's dating Matt Smith in real life.
I did know that. She is dating the 11th Doctor in real life, for those of you who are keeping track. So
I read it on the interwebs.
I think they tied it up well with the Christmas special, that if he didn't come back, it was fine.
It left the storyline. Yeah. Just like with Lady Rose, if her and her new husband and his family go back to America, they wrapped that up quite nicely as well.
We can still hear from them in letters.
Yes, through letters.
They're not dead like some of the other people who have left. So that's a nice way to continue things. Oh, Lady Rose had a baby, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not like they're rich. They can, they can come back from America at any point. Mm-hmm. So, assuming they go, let's talk about, to kind of bring this to fruition, let's talk about what we would like to see ideally out of the last season, which is season 6. And let's take it in turns. So, Stacey, tell me what you want to see. What's the ideal end for Downton Abbey?
Oh, I don't know that I have an ideal end. As I said, I would love to have them go to the stock market crash in the United States to see how that would impact, considering that Cora's money was such a big part of it, and it's probably tied to some American pieces. I think that would be interesting. I'm not sure that I really have a way I want it to end. I think if they just end with kind of wrapping up some of the stories, maybe Carson and Mrs. Hughes getting married, and Edith maybe going to London and saying, you know what, Tom and Sibby have left, and I think Marigold and I will be best if we stay in London for the most part, and I run the business and do those pieces. And so, yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't really thought that far ahead. I'm kind of waiting for them to tell me how it's going to end.
Fair enough.
I'm just hoping it's not a whole bunch of new storylines and then a really quick ending. I hope that it all draws to some sort of natural conclusion. I would love some sort of serious fast forward, like 10, 15 years. Get us to maybe like 30s, maybe almost World War II. Considering they had that whole Hitler comment, maybe that's going somewhere, especially with Atticus being Jewish.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
That I'm reading into the foreshadowing there, but
I don't know that you are. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I would like there to be some sort of natural conclusion where we know everybody is safe and has a path, and not tons of open-ended, well, we'll just have to hope for the best type of ending.
Sure.
Series endings are always tricky. We were just talking about that with Mad Men, about how no one ever likes everything.
That's true.
So hopefully it's some sort of happy medium.
It could be a Harry Potter type ending. Because I thought they did a nice job on the end of the Harry Potter movies of that exact same thing.
Yeah.
We jumped forward,
like
so
the
many
footnote.
years.
The epilogue.
Yes.
Epilogue.
I hated that in Harry Potter, but hopefully I wouldn't mind seeing something like, considering we've gone from 1912 to 1924, jumping forward would make a logical step.
This is a tough question.
It is, isn't it? I have to have a few.
Yeah. Well, knowing from the beginning that the intent of the series is to show the fall of the aristocracy and how things have progressed into, to today's society, I think we're going to get to that point where it does fall, or it's about to fall. I hope we see some of the aftermath and see, like Krista said, how the characters have progressed. Down the road, it would be nice to kind of get that little bit of an epilogue to make sure that everyone is, as they should be, and they're okay with the new lifestyle that this fall brings.
Because they'll still be loaded.
Yeah, they will.
So
They'll
be okay.
Yeah.
There are still lords even now. That's what comprise the House of Lords. So.
Exactly. And so, I think it'll just be very interesting to see where they go. I would like to see Edith and Marigold happy and thriving. I hope, Mary finds happiness and that she helps usher George into being the new, Earl of Grantham in whatever manner that is left. It's going to be very interesting to see how Isabel and Lord Merton end up, knowing his two awful sons are still in the picture.
Oh, they were terrible.
They were terrible. It'd be very interesting if they end up killing off the Dowager Countess of Violet, because, even Maggie Smith, she has said, Violet's really old at this point. She was old at the start of the series, and now we're 10 years on. Her clock's ticking. And so it'd be very interesting if they ended up having her death in one of the episodes and how that affects the family, too.
She would be in her late 80s or 90s at this point.
Yes, she would, which is very uncommon back then for that long of a lifespan. But I think it'd be very interesting to get to the stock market crash, to another world war. It'll be interesting to see how far they jump ahead this next season.
Dowager dying would be, and maybe towards the end they could bring everyone back. That
Maybe that's what gets Lady Rose and Tom and Sidney back from America, is her funeral or a memorial service of some sort.
That's your comment about the costumes early on. Wouldn't that be fun if we jump ahead quite a bit? A whole different...
Well, we've already seen them progress from the teens to the 20s. We've got the flapper style, and now we're kind of progressing into what the 30s ultimately became.
As for me, I think I'm more where Krista is. I just want a logical conclusion for the characters. I don't know that I have an ideal. I don't know that I like any of these characters enough to envision an ideal for them, if that makes sense. I mean, I love the show, and I follow the show, but it's not like other shows where you really glom onto characters and you are cheering for those characters the whole time, like, say, Game of Thrones. You might have picked a few of the heroes out of the different houses, but with Downton Abbey, it's really about the ensemble in general. So I think that for me, the logical conclusion to their story, whatever that may be, is going to be what satisfies me. So whether it's Violet's death because she's very old, or whether it's because it's Edith's, life transformation, going to London, Mary, maybe she ends up alone, maybe she ends up with someone who's really her match, or is similar to Matthew and how happy she can be, anything like that. I imagine Robert and Cora will weather the storm because they have each other. I think that's a theme that's been hit on really hard, especially in the 5th season. I mean, as long as Mr. Fellows does justice to what he's already created in these first 5 seasons, I think that I'll be happy no matter what. It's only the season finales where they kind of hit left field that I sit there thinking, oh my God, what did you just do? And Krista's right. I mean, every series finale brings along its controversies, but there are series finales that are overall going to be more widely accepted So I just hope that this is one of those and not, say, a Lost or a Sopranos
or
Dexter
or a How I Met Your Mother.
Or, yeah, any of those. And really, all other podcast possibilities. So, one final question. I always end this podcast with this question. Are you going to watch season 6 through to the end?
Absolutely can't wait. It's on my countdown clock.
Whoa!
When it starts.
when does it start?
January
I have to
2016.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Yeah, they're currently filming right now. As far as we know, the series finale, Mr. Fellows has not written as of today's date,
When
June
does it
7th.
airs? What airs in England this fall?
This fall.
September.
I think, yep, September and October.
So
For
he has
Christmas.
not written the finale
As of
yet?
right now, he said he has not written the finale as of maybe a week ago, but he could also just be saying that. But it'll be interesting to see where he takes it. But yes, I'm going to keep watching.
I'll be watching as well.
So will I. I think we all love Downton Abbey. And as for me, whenever I hear that theme song, little chills crawl up and down my spine because I'm just so excited. So, with that said, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Couch Potatoes Unite! We're going to wrap Downton Abbey up this time and, of course, not record again until next year after that last finale has finally aired, and we'll probably be equal parts happy and sad and bitter and whatever might bring this out of this funk. But I just wanted to thank you all for listening. Stay tuned. We do have other podcasts upcoming, including one for Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, the Netflix original. So keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned. Couch Potatoes Unite will be returning soon. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.